outside, round the outside.
You know it.
Two buffalo gals go around the outside, round the outside, round the outside. Three buffalo gals go around the outside.
So Malcolm McLaren was many things. He was an artist, a fashion designer, a band manager, an impresario, and a musician. He's most famous for managing and pretty much creating the phenomenon that was the Sex Pistols. And to claim that he engineered the punk outbreak in the UK isn't a crazy claim. He'd come back to England after managing the New York Dolls. He started a clothing shop with Vivienne Westwood, who was at the time his girlfriend. And there's a whole lot of controversy about him. He courted scandal. He once said, "I've been called many things, a charlatan, a con man, or most flatteringly, the culprit responsible for turning British popular culture into nothing more than a cheap marketing gimmick, and this is my chance to prove that these accusations are true." However, after the punk thing, he recorded some albums. They're diverse in style and at times quite unusual. Hi, my name is Dan, and if you know this album, or you're new to it and you've got something to say, I'd love to hear what you think of it. There is a button down here which is comments, and there's another button, a big red button down here, which is subscribe. So I would very much encourage you to push that button. You get all sorts of magical surprises if you do. Actually, what you get is you get to join me on my journey through discovering the world's best albums. I have a big list of 3,000 of these. This is number 50, so it's a little milestone, but we've got a long way to go. Please click that button, come and join me. That will be fabulous. So, this album. It's Malcolm McLaren's first album after the punk thing had gone away. Just as a bit of an aside, I wasn't a great fan of Malcolm McLaren's public persona in the punk period. I think that the accusations of him being cynically manipulative of the market are well-founded. And it was a surprise to me when a few years later he re-emerged as a musician. And what he was doing was actually quite interesting. So I didn't buy this album at that time. I haven't heard it that many times. But I bought the next album after this, which was called Fans, which is a blend of electronica and opera. Very odd. Anyway, let's get on to this album here. So musically, this album is a blend between early hip-hop and world music. So hip-hop was just breaking in the UK with people like Grandmaster Flash and other people. It was a phenomenon that was particularly coming out of New York. It seemed that Malcolm McLaren had a handle on that. So some of the musicians that are involved in this album, there's people from all around the world as well, but the kind of, in some ways, the backing band, as it were, are a guy called Trevor Horn, who was previously in the Buggles. He had a stint in the band Yes, and he became the producer for Frankie Goes to Hollywood and similar pop disco electronic sounding stuff. Another two were Anne Dudley and a guy called J.J. Jeksalik. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name properly. And these three, apparently, in between doing recording sessions for this album, did some of their own stuff. And that became a thing called the art of noise. And if you were around in Britain in the 1980s, you would have been aware of the art of noise. They're a kind of music concrete pop sampler thing, which was very interesting. Anyway, putting that aside, blended with this sort of stuff and kind of the scratching, as I said, and a bit of rapping, there's several world styles. So there's particularly South African, kind of what I think of as South African jangle pop. It's the kind of stuff that Paul Simon used a lot in the backing of his Graceland album. And there are, quite a few other people from South Africa who were doing this kind of stuff. There's a guy called Johnny Clegg who was particularly prominent. But it also includes other African music. It includes a mambo, which is Latino, and right at the end, a square dance hoedown, which is kind of weird. And the timing on this is very interesting in some ways, because this is just on the crest of a wave at the start of a huge interest in world music. And world music is something that I'm very interested in. So one thing that surprised me about this album is how it's mashing it up and it's layering stuff on top of it, but the actual world music elements of it are pretty genuine and they're pretty kind of true to the stuff that you would find out there in these places. So it's not like a pseudo watering down. It's pretty good. So it could have been, with this kind of mashing stuff together, it could have been a recipe for disaster. But it's not, because it's quite skillfully put together. It blended these weird things that you wouldn't think that go together, but it blends nicely and it works. Added to all this, there's this kind of concept. So there's intermissions between the tracks, and they're pretending to be a phone-in snippets from a radio station. So the whole thing is kind of created to be as if you were listening to it as a radio show with these phone-ins and the DJ responses and stuff. And this habit of putting stuff in between the tracks, these little intermissions, is now thoroughly built into hip-hop. But at the time, I'm not sure that I particularly heard it in other albums outside of things like concept albums of progressive rock. So the end result's an album that works best as an album. So you can, pick up the individual tracks from it and listen to them, but as an album experience, it's pretty good. It's bright, it's sunny, it's full of fun. Unlike the punk stuff in Malcolm McLaren's Plast, it's very safe for work kind of stuff. And it's a bit like the vibrancy of the South African music that's used. It comes across as being shiny and happy and interesting. It is unusual, and it could be thought of as a novelty album, just except for the fact that it's actually really pretty good. So, I liked it, and that's it from me for now.